2, 1.
This is Remso Republic.
The clash of punk rock and politics.
Welcome to Remso Republic.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the one, the only Remso Republic podcast. I'm your host, as always, Remso W1. Just go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Remso101. That's REMSO101. Here at the show, we have one mission that we try and do very well. It's super cheesy, definitely a ripoff, but hopefully you'll learn to love it over time. It's making freedom fun again. The ideas of individual liberty, free markets, limited government, the concept that you do you, I do me. We don't use the government as a violent middleman, and we can go ahead and live peacefully and prosperously. Common sense knowledge for most of you, but radical thoughts for most of America. I'm going to go ahead and skip our usual monologue because as our season finale, I went ahead and brought on somebody that matches kind of our theme the last 30 or so episodes, the ideas of disruptors. And nobody, forget the people that you could think of, obviously. Nobody has made more of an impact on the American political system, the idea of liberty, the idea of individual freedom in my lifetime, or maybe even your lifetime if you're in a different generation than I and many other listeners, than this man. He ran for president in 1988, 2008, and 2012. Without him, I can certainly tell you, I would not be here today talking to you. Ladies and gentlemen, the former congressman from Texas, Dr. Ron Paul. Dr. Paul, thank you so much for coming on. Such an honor for you to be with us today.
Thank you. Very nice to be with you.
So, sir, I've only got you on for so much time, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of spit through these. If they sound a little bit repetitive, I do apologize, but every episode is somebody's new, somebody's first episode. We have so many new listeners just trying to get into these ideas. A question a little bit more personal for me is, it's been so long since your 2012 campaign. It's already 2018 now. It sounds so incredible when I say it out loud because so much time has passed. And that libertarian moment that many saw with you, with your son, with many others, they feel that now that time might be coming. But for many people, they believe that the ideas and concepts of liberty are antiquated. They believe that we need to go ahead and continue, as you used to say, sacrificing liberty for security. As you look at people in my generation, as you look at the American population worried about paying the bills, taking care of their children, will they have work? Do you think that Americans still care about, as Thomas Jefferson once called it, the empire of liberty, this concept of natural rights and freedom? Or do you think we're turning away from that message as a society?
I don't think we're turning away, but I don't think a large majority agree with us. I think the very large majority don't have a strong opinion, and they go along with the flow, and they act in their own self-interest. But I think things are going very well. Because I think the system that we're looking at now, and that I've been complaining about for a long time, whether it's our financial situation, whether it's our ridiculous foreign policy, or the systematic attack on our liberties, it is so bad. I think a lot of people are waking up, and they need to hear the message that we don't have to do this. So I think the worse it gets, the more opportunities that we have. And some argue with me and say, yeah, but you're not in Washington, you don't pass any laws, and they haven't taken over, and we don't hear much from the libertarians. And there's a little bit of truth to that, but it might not be as relevant as most people think, because it's an ideological struggle, it's an ideas that we have to deal with, and I think that's where we're doing a very good job. You have a program, and you're reaching out, and I can't tell you how many people I run into in the last 10 years that have joined in and have their own little organization or program or what they're doing. And I think of the institutes that I work with, some of my own, a group like the Mises Institute, they've been changing people's minds. And yet on the surface, what it appears that our numbers are weak. I don't think that's the case. I think the message is out there. I think it's sound. There's going to be a need. And therefore, I remain optimistic about it, although we have a long, hard struggle yet to come.
Absolutely. And when you look at the past 6 years especially, I mean, we have the world, we have access to all the information in the world at our fingertips. Last week, I didn't have any cash to tip my waiter, so I tipped him in Bitcoin. That's something I never thought I'd be able to do. This is a beautiful time to be alive, but I'm I think I'm not necessarily even a pessimist. I think I'm more of a catastrophist sometimes, because I see small victories and I see big pushbacks. Of Trump, there are some things I like, but there are some things that do often scare me. When it comes to certain policy areas that you think Americans are looking at transpartisan solutions for, whether it's electoral reform or, really trying to reevaluate their stance on the war on drugs, what are some key areas that you think are really going to lead the advancement for these liberty ideas in the future?
Well, I think it has to start with a one-on-one, one individual with another, using whatever tools one has to change their attitude about the role of government. I often have said in my speeches that the only question we have to ask and answer is, what should the role of government be? And then you have a lot of answers. Well, the government's there to take care of us, and the government is there to make us safe, and that's why we have to have this foreign policy. So we have to decide that, but if you come up with a different answers like the founders did, say, no, the government is there to protect our liberties and turn the responsibility over to the individual, and we concentrate on nonviolence, all of a sudden it's completely different. And that's the message, and that is the answer. So sometimes when I look at the political system, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. A lot of people would ask me, how did you put up with that stuff in Washington? You were there a long time. Would it drive you just nuts? You didn't have that much of an impact on legislation. Of course, I was there and doing my thing with the idea of spreading a message. And I have had a token amount of success at doing that. I think that's the only thing that really counts. So I think that the message is loud and clear. There's more joining us. But then I can hear the argument come out, yeah, but what about Bernie Sanders? He's the one that gets the big crowds at the universities right now. So I would say, well, that is true, but also numbers aren't as important. It's the quality, it's the people in the right place, it's the energy that people have, and it's the ideas. If the ideas are correct, you can't stop them. Armies can't stop ideas, and ideas spread, and that is what is important. I'm convinced that our side has the right ideas. We have the answers. If you want peace and prosperity and you want a better world, they have to look toward the ideas and the principles of liberty. And so often I ask myself, if it is so great like you claim, like I claim, why aren't we doing better? And that is a good question. Why aren't we doing better? It's because the demagogues are out there and wealth is out there, and they've been able to use the wealth to undermine the system that created the wealth. But the wealth is going to disappear, and it's going to be tougher times. The stock market is not telling us what it's going to be like in a year or two from now, because there will be payment. Debt is the big problem. This idea that we can finance everything by borrowing money and the world accepting our dollars as we print them, it's not going to last. And that is why it's so important for us to continue this effort in our own self-interest. And I think it's a worthwhile goal. Matter of fact, I enjoy doing it because I get to meet like-minded people, which I didn't get much of a chance to in Washington. That was a different story. But no, I think we have to be very precise in our understanding. You mentioned the internet already in modern times. When I started to get my interest in the 1950s, very difficult to find information. And I did discover the Foundation for Economic Education, an organization that was organized by Leonard Read. He put out books, and you'd write, read, and go to conferences and things. But it was very difficult and slow. Sometimes you wait a long time to get a book. And now you can get books pretty fast. You can either instantaneously on the internet, or they'll mail them to you the next day. So it's a different world. We just need more confidence, and that's where I have confidence. I don't brag about me being the greatest person to deliver the message, but I do tell people that I am convinced that the ideas of liberty are proper and are worthwhile, and they're very necessary. I'm very confident about the message after having looked at all the alternatives. And believe me, there's a lot of alternatives out there that have been tried. Right now, I say the big test is progressivism in the last 100 years, both in foreign policy and especially in economic policy. Total failure. That's why I don't worry about Bernie Sanders taking over. All he has to do is go. All we need to do is go to Detroit. Go to Detroit and Chicago and a few of these places. I mean, the whole thing's falling apart because of this authoritarianism in economics. And of course, the authoritarianism when it comes to personal liberty is so abhorrent that people eventually should wake up. Dependency is the bad thing, and the demagogues, that's very bad. And I became pretty annoyed after 9/11 because the demagogues are, well, Ron, you got a good story, but you got to give up liberty. How can you be safe if you don't give up your liberty? And they would use that argument. Well, there's a limit. I'll tell them, well, you haven't been flying the airplane very much lately. You haven't had the TSAs prodding and poking at you. Maybe that should. I said what would wake up the administration is that we ought to make and require our presidents to go through security at airports and not have a private airplane. Let them do that. Let them get to it. And they might decide that personal privacy and liberty might be worthwhile.
Oh, you're so absolutely true. And you brought up Detroit a moment ago. It's the reason why I think, we should allow Americans to go travel to Cuba. We have a living history of socialism right there. If they don't believe it here within the boundaries of our country, they might as well go there and see the horrors of it. But you brought up something which was so important. I'm glad you did. It's the Bernie bros. It's the folks that think that this democratic socialism that Senator Sanders has tried to push for so long is somehow a viable option for government. And one of my favorite quotes from yours was, I think it was at the first Young Americans for Liberty conference. When it comes to a revolution, how can you have a revolution without music? Liberty is fun. The people that love it are some of the most energetic, well-read individuals out there. And the majority of them are millennials. I'm only 23. I've been, watching everything you've been doing since 2012. You're one of my heroes. And I just feel that the millennial bashing I get from a lot of older Republicans, I almost feel like it's just, I'm part of like this protected class. They hate millennials. We're sponges on society. We're lazy. We don't innovate. We're not entrepreneurial. When you look at millennials today, do you think we fit that stereotype, or do you think something else is a brewing?
I don't put people in groups. I don't like it, I don't like it in politics. Oh, one thing that annoys me is putting people into groups. I think it's very discriminatory. And on election night, they want to know, how did the Hispanics vote? How did the black people vote? How did the white people vote? But I don't care about that. I want to know about individuals who happen to have been exposed to freedom ideas. Did they vote the right way? And are they promoting the cause correctly? So, the millennials, it's a group, the young people, we have to think about groups. I know that I was growing up in the 50s and they called us the silent generation. I didn't know that, what exactly that meant. But, there's certain things that changes in each generation. I mean, certainly young people now, your age group certainly has been exposed to some of the technological changes that might have taken hundreds of years to achieve. My big complaint about the technological changes of so much, and I've written about this, is why has the technological changes been used so much in the use of fighting wars? Why hasn't the technological changes been used to promote peace? So there's a disconnect there. So there's a lot of wonderful technology, but when you look at it, so much of it has been used to make bigger bombs and more surveillance and undermining liberty. Now we have to get people thinking that, yes, all this modern technology should be used individuals to act responsibly and realize it's up to them to take care of themselves and that it's not worthwhile. You can't try to lecture them in a sense that, this is the right thing to do. But it's the best thing that you can do, for yourself. But it is a moral issue as well. I think there is a moral tone to what the law is. That you have a right to your life and your liberty, and you should assume responsibility. And so many answers can come from that. So I think that's the message that we have to continue to spread.
I completely agree. Sir, I only have a few minutes with you left, but I want to do something special for my listeners. They went ahead and submitted some questions that they wanted to ask you. Kelsey from Iowa writes, Dr. Paul, in the past you've often given us reading lists for liberty, but I'm more curious, what's a reading list you would give to people that want to go ahead and have a different look on their Christian faith?
Well, I don't have any one book that I can recommend there. I would think it's going to be more of an experience, of people, associated with people that you respect. Certainly, any influence in my life for that would have come from my parents. And I think that's one of the crises we face. When I think about all the things I complain about, when it boils down to it, comes from the morality of the individual, and the breakup of the family may be the bigger issue than the political issue. The politics might be the symptom of the breakdown of society and the breakdown of the family. And so I don't have a magic book, but I know the first thing you have to be is inquisitive. You want to find it. And when you see somebody you respect and you know that they do have faith, those are the kind of people you want to talk to. And I do believe that the most important influence will be our families. But I still know some people who have terrible lives, raised either without parents or single parents and living in a slum. And they still did quite well because somebody along the way influenced them into looking into, what it means to lead a moral life.
Perfect. We have 2 questions left. This next one comes from David in New York. Rather simple. You've been talking about this a lot lately. Where do you see the future of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum as we're turning away from a society where we exchange cash and other commodities and turning it to more things like crypto?
Yeah, I've talked a lot about this, and I don't come down hard-nosed with a prediction. But I usually end up talking more about what I think money is all about and what it's been like for 6,000 years. And money has always been something tangible. I can know about that and know what happens when it's not tangible, how many times it breaks down. And like in this country, the fact that the tangible currency actually totally disappeared in 1971, and that's since that we've had this fiat currency. It's led to this financial time bomb that we're living with. I supported competing currencies when I was in Congress. Let people use whatever they want for money. And the government's done such a lousy job. They're official counterfeiters, and so they should not be in charge. When the people pick, they usually pick something of real value. Now, when we live in a modern age, it might be something else. I am not convinced because I have been conditioned to think that you should have something of tangible value. But if the market permits it, there's one caveat: no fraud. The governments always fail because of fraud. So if the marketplace comes up with something that fraud is involved with, then that's bad news for it. But voluntarism and deciding what we want to use for exchanging goods and services, I think it is fine in the ending. And it's still unknown exactly how well these currencies are going to do, because right now I'd be concerned about the volatility in cryptocurrencies. When you add up the capitalization of all the cryptocurrencies, it's been up over $800 billion. See, that sort of blows my mind.
It's insane.
Then others would say, one reason why, where did money come? Inflation. Isn't it ironic that people who are doing very well and would like a replacement for the dollar system, they're making a lot of money because of the dollar system. They printed so much money and it has to go somewhere, and they're investing and they're doing well. But as long as it's a voluntary, transaction, that's okay with me. But time will tell on whether or not Bitcoin's going to replace the dollar, and that remains to be seen.
Perfect. And Dr. Paul, our last question comes from Kimberly in Virginia. In the past 8 years or so, we've seen a rise in the relevancy of third parties, whether it was Robert Sarvis, who ran as a Libertarian for governor in 2013 in Virginia, or Gary Johnson in 2016. Do you think Americans are going to continue to push this third-party trend, or do you think they're going to become more apathetic when it comes to the party system as a whole?
Well, I don't even think about it. I don't think that's the answer. The system has been so biased against outlawing competition with the one party. See, I think they asked, do you believe in a third party? I said, no, I believe in a second party. Because the Democrats and Republicans are in collusion all the time. That's the real collusion. Whether it's the Federal Reserve or foreign policy or spending or anything else. So they get together. You don't get in debates. You can't get on the ballots, and it's a lot. It's a lot of discrimination against any alternative party. So I wish them well. Anybody's going to compete with the single party. I encourage them to do it, but I think it's way secondary. One person, somebody asked me, well, how are we going to get the Republican Party to become the Libertarian Party? I said, that's not the way to do it. You have to change ideas. Keynesianism and inflationism and warfareism, that's not a Republican or a Democratic issue. It's an idea that all the parties have accepted. So if the principles of liberty are well enough known and acceptable, it will infiltrate and permeate all the parties. Then you won't worry too much, because right now our enemies have won and they have infiltrated and they control both parties. That's why libertarian parties and limited government parties are very, very important. But that is to spread the message and the understanding of economics and why we don't need to be going to war and all these things. And when they become unpopular enough with the people, then that will reflect on what's happening to the Congress. The Congress and government always are a reflection of a prevailing attitude of the people. So my goal has always been to try to change the prevailing attitude of the people, that of liberty rather than authoritarianism.
Dr. Paul, thank you so much for your time. In closing, so much time you spent in Congress, you ran for president on multiple occasions, and yet you've continued to keep pushing the idea of liberty through your institute, your books, so much more through your show. When you look at the future for your grandchildren, do you feel that, things will get better for us as an American society, or, are you somewhat worried about the course we're going? I mean, people think that Oprah might be president. That kind of terrifies me.
Yeah, well, I'm concerned. I don't think it's going to be smooth sailing. There's going to be a lot of problems, and I give it some worry. But, if you want to worry about things, you should worry about getting in your car today or something else. Nobody knows what the future will bring. I think that's why we should try to do something we enjoy, especially if you're promoting something you believe in, and do your very best. It's not as relevant to think about 20 or 30 years from now. I think that in the near future, if we say the next 5 years of the near future, I think it's going to be pretty rough. But if you say, could things be better for the whole country and the world in 20 years, I would say, yeah, there's a very good chance, as long as people will be stimulated to believe and work for the cause of liberty.
Dr. Paul, thank you so much. Folks, if definitely find him on social media, his website, and so much more. We'll link to that in the show notes. Sir, God bless you. Thank you so much. And, this is just me, but if you did not do what you did, I would not have my show. I would not be able to reach out to so many thousands of listeners each and every week. So thank you for everything you've done.
Good, and congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
All right.